After accepting Elder Tianhe's gift, Luo Feng reviewed the 12 invitations he had received. He ignored the others and focused on the invitation from Yuan Shang Palace Master. He was surprised because, according to the information he had gathered, Wei Yong Palace Master normally recruited every newly promoted elder but had not invited him. Since Wei Yong controlled many of the city's theft and plunder factions and Luo Feng already disliked his methods, he decided to visit Yuan Shang Palace Master instead. Curious about the founder of Yulan City, the next day, Luo Feng visited Yuan Shang Palace Master's residence. Although it had once been the largest mansion in Yulan City, Wei Yong had expanded his own estate to surpass it. Luo Feng was welcomed by Earth Third General, one of Yuan Shang Palace Master's 3 extremely powerful puppets, each possessing strength comparable to a perfect low-level primordial life and ranking among the strongest divine emperors in the city. Impressed by such foundations, Luo Feng met Yuan Shang Palace Master in a peaceful garden. Yuan Shang Palace Master naturally radiated an irresistible charm. Yet Luo Feng immediately sensed that his aura was unusually weak and his life fire was barely sustaining him. The Palace Master explained that he had once joined companions in hunting super-limit low-level primordial life forms. But one unexpectedly evolved into a high-level primordial life during the battle. Although he survived thanks to his source world's protection and a secret technique that safeguarded his spiritual will, he was permanently contaminated. According to the Dark Sacred Realm's records, only breaking free from the braided cage with one's spiritual will could remove such contamination. Since then, he had focused entirely on cultivating his spiritual will and used his accumulated battle merit to build Yulan City while enduring his worsening condition. Because of the contamination, Yuan Shang Palace Master rarely acted or sought influence, allowing Wei Yong Palace Master, who aggressively recruited powerful cultivators and pursued profit, to become the city's dominant figure. Yuan Shang Palace Master admitted he had no interest in power, only maintaining the city he had created. When Luo Feng asked why he had been invited, Yuan Shang Palace Master revealed that after Luo Feng defeated Elder Tianhe, he contacted the 2 divine emperors from the land of origin in the Dark Sacred Realm and learned about Luo Feng's astonishing growth. He discovered that Luo Feng had advanced from eternal true god to early divine emperor in just over 1,000 years. Then reached late divine emperor within another 1,000 years while already surpassing Elder Tianhe. He believed Luo Feng's talent exceeded even his own in his youth. The palace master explained that his invitation had no hidden malice. His greatest concern was that low-level primordial life creatures were infiltrating Yulan City more frequently, raising the possibility that the city would eventually fall and its hundreds of millions of cultivators would perish. He had no confidence in Wei Yong, believing Wei Yong would abandon the city to save himself if disaster struck. Since Yuan Shang Palace Master felt personally responsible for everyone living there, he wanted to prepare for the future before his own mind was completely destroyed by contamination. He therefore proposed grooming Luo Feng as his successor. Yuan Shang Palace Master believed that once Luo Feng matured, his strength alone could surpass all the elders combined. At that point, he intended to transfer the city builder's authority to Luo Feng, giving him control over the city's rules and benefits, including the ability to reward or restrain powerful figures like Wei Yong. However, Luo Feng would first need to surpass both Wei Yong Palace Master and Gai Dao, who had both reached the half-primordial level with deep foundations. Yuan Shang Palace Master estimated that Luo Feng would need to cultivate at least 2 separate paths to the half-primordial level before qualifying. Although Luo Feng admitted he still had a long road ahead, the Palace Master believed his talent was exceptional enough to achieve this within 10,000 eras. As a gesture of goodwill, Yuan Shang Palace Master presented Luo Feng with an ownerless spatial bracelet. Inside were primordial crystal blocks worth an astonishing 50 billion primordial crystals. Although Luo Feng realized accepting such an enormous gift meant owing a significant favor and effectively choosing Yuan Shang Palace Master's side among the 3 Palace Masters, he accepted because the resources were extremely valuable for his current cultivation. The Palace Master simply instructed him to focus on cultivation and ignore the city's internal affairs for now. After Luo Feng departed, Yuan Shang Palace Master reflected that the contamination within him continued to worsen each day and that he did not know when his consciousness would finally collapse. Before that happened, he hoped to secure Yulan City's future. He believed Luo Feng represented the city's greatest hope. Soon afterward, one of his surveillance systems reported that a divine emperor named Ku Feng in the outer city was suspected of being controlled by a low-level primordial life. Yuan Shang Palace Master immediately ordered continuous monitoring to uncover additional hidden infiltrators, explaining that dormant enemies were far more dangerous than those who openly attacked. Meanwhile, Luo Feng returned to his own cave mansion, smiling as he looked at the bracelet. He understood that accepting the Palace Master's gift had aligned him with Yuan Shang Palace Master, a choice he was already inclined to make. Although reaching the required level within 10,000 eras seemed like an enormous challenge, he appreciated the Palace Master's confidence in his future potential. Luo Feng received 12 invitations after his victory over Elder Tian He, but only one required a personal visit, from Yuan Shang Palace Master. The other 11 came from elder-level factions eager to recruit him after recognizing his overwhelming strength. One visitor was Vice Hall Master Zhou Ju of Qinbao Hall, who praised Luo Feng's fame before explaining that Qinbao Hall, led by the Master of Thousand Treasures Hall and himself, specialized in refining and selling weapon secret treasures. Although it was among Yulan City's top merchants, it struggled to compete with Master Gai Dao, who controlled over half of the market. Zhou Ju also revealed that Qinbao Hall had once suffered a devastating robbery worth more than 20 billion primordial crystals despite having 2 elders and powerful defensive formations. The attackers' identities remained unknown, but their strength suggested they were among the city's top 20 experts. Hoping to strengthen the hall's security, Zhou Ju invited Luo Feng to become a Vice Hall Master, offering 10,000 primordial crystals every epoch and a 200 million primordial crystal signing bonus paid in 2 installments. Luo Feng considered the offer too modest for someone of his strength, especially since Qinbao Hall admitted it lacked funds after the robbery. Although Zhou Ju suggested Luo Feng could join multiple factions using his many avatars and emphasized Qinbao Hall's connection to Wei Yang Palace Master, Luo Feng only promised to think about it before politely ending the meeting. After meeting representatives from all 11 factions, Luo Feng's original plan of assigning different avatars to multiple organizations changed because Yuan Shang Palace Master had already gifted him 50 billion primordial crystals, greatly easing his financial needs. He sought Emperor Qing's advice by reviewing all 11 invitations and announced that he intended to join only one faction rather than several. Emperor Qing pointed out that Dan Tower and Chongqing building owner offered the best conditions among the available choices. Although Dan Tower was involved in a long-standing conflict with the insect nest, Luo Feng accepted the potential risks, believing greater rewards required greater risks, and ultimately chose Dan Tower. Luo Feng then invited Emperor Qing, Emperor Ming, and Di Fu to join Dan Tower with him. Since Dan Tower could easily provide positions for all 3, they gladly accepted, recognizing that they could gain stable income without risking their lives outside the city. Emperor Qing especially appreciated the opportunity because, despite his cultivation level, obtaining a trusted senior position in a faction would normally be difficult without Luo Feng's recommendation. When Luo Feng officially met Dan Tower's silver-haired building owner, the elder warmly welcomed him, admitting he had been worried another faction would recruit Luo Feng first. He explained that he had helped build Yulan City alongside Yuan Shang Palace Master long ago. But after Yuan Shang Palace Master became contaminated by high-level primordial life and withdrew from most affairs, Dan Tower had suffered constant pressure from the insect nest master. Although both specialized in alchemy, the building owner looked down on the insect nest master's cruel methods of extracting life essence to create medicine and accused him of relying on underhanded tactics when fair competition failed. Confident that Luo Feng's presence would greatly strengthen Dan Tower, he promised to purchase any formations Luo Feng needed for defense. The building owner presented Luo Feng with the agreed signing bonus of 500 million primordial crystals. But Luo Feng immediately chose to spend the entire amount purchasing Dan Tower's medicinal pills instead. Delighted by this decision, the building owner granted Luo Feng the same wholesale purchasing price he enjoyed himself, only 60% of the normal cost. An exceptionally favorable rate with almost no profit margin for Dan Tower. Luo Feng gratefully accepted the arrangement. When asked about Emperor Qing, Emperor Ming, and Di Fu, Luo Feng confirmed they would all join Dan Tower, allowing the building owner to assign them duties according to their abilities. The elder was highly pleased, believing that recruiting Luo Feng together with his trusted companions would create a much stronger and more stable relationship. With Luo Feng, a cultivator widely believed to rank among Yuan City's top 100, and possibly even top 50, Dan Tower finally gained the powerful protector it had desperately needed to stand against the insect nest and continue operating normally. Luo Feng visited the Dan Tower, the leading alchemy organization in Yuan City. Although its location was less prestigious than his own cave mansion, it was hundreds of times larger. With over 100 pavilions dedicated to alchemy and residence, the Chongqing building owner allowed Luo Feng to examine the tower's entire defensive formation and asked him to redesign it according to his own preferences, assuring him that cost was not a concern. After studying the existing array, Luo Feng requested formation materials worth about 30 million primordial crystals, which delighted the Chongqing building owner because he wanted the strongest possible defense. Using the materials, Luo Feng personally constructed a massive fixed formation composed of 36 interconnected arrays. Every array embodied half-primordial level mysteries, making the design extremely complicated and even beyond Luo Feng's current ability to fully control. After half a day of careful work, the formation was completed, although he could only unleash around 30 to 40% of its true power. It still far surpassed his Xuanqing Sky Annihilation map and even provided a greater boost than the Undying Heart. Satisfied that the Dan Tower was now much safer, Luo Feng turned his attention to another matter. He informed the Chongqing building owner that he intended to purchase more than 2 billion primordial crystals worth of low-level primordial life materials. Surprised by the scale of the purchase, the Chongqing building owner recommended Elder Xingyi, whose reputation for fairness was unmatched. Elder Xingyi was also the direct disciple of a legendary invincible existence from the Dark Sacred Realm, a title that even Luo Feng found astonishing given the countless elite cultivators gathered there. Luo Feng contacted Elder Xingyi and sent him a detailed shopping list. After reviewing it, Elder Xingyi suggested that Luo Feng did not need to buy bloodlines separately. But Luo Feng insisted on following his own plan. Elder Xingyi then offered him the lowest possible prices and explained that many of the requested materials were so rare that some would have to be transported from the Dark Sacred Realm. Confident in Luo Feng's credibility, he required no deposit and promised delivery in 3 days. 3 days later, Elder Xingyi arrived at Luo Feng's cave mansion with all the requested materials, including several complete primordial bloodlines that had been carefully preserved. After confirming everything, Luo Feng paid 2.83 billion primordial crystals, making it the largest purchase of his life so far. Elder Xingyi also offered to help him obtain even rarer superlimit bloodlines in the future. Though Luo Feng decided such purchases would have to wait despite his increased wealth after receiving 5 billion primordial crystals from Yuan Palace Master. Afterward, Luo Feng spent another 500 million primordial crystals at the Dan Tower on cultivation medicines, prepared gifts for his teacher Emperor Chu, Mountain Sitting Guest, Primal Chaos City Lord, and several others. Then quietly departed Yuan City, carrying the precious materials together with the Undying Heart and Palm World. He secretly returned to the land of origin and entered the Star Tower. Inside the Star Tower, Luo Feng laid out all the purchased materials and activated the Eye of Life and Death. He first examined 15 fragments from an early-stage Divine Emperor-level member of the Nirvana-fired Tribulation Snake Clan, including teeth, scales, bones, and membranes. After thoroughly analyzing each fragment, he reconstructed the complete structure and mysteries of the creature within his mind. He then compared his reconstruction with the genuine complete bloodline he had purchased. The comparison immediately revealed that his own understanding was crude, while the naturally formed bloodline represented perfect harmony. By studying the differences, Luo Feng gained profound insights into how the mysteries of life and destruction could be combined more perfectly, greatly improving his comprehension despite the bloodline belonging only to a low-level primordial life at the early-stage Divine Emperor level. Luo Feng used the Eye of Life and Death to observe a complete Nirvana-fired Tribulation Snake bloodline. Under its power, the bloodline revealed countless interconnected layers of secret patterns that perfectly merged into a complete structure capable of transcending the braided cage. Witnessing this, Luo Feng realized all of his previous methods for reconstructing bloodlines were fundamentally flawed. He compared the experience to learning directly from nature. believing that studying naturally evolved primordial bloodlines was another way of understanding the laws of heaven and earth. He immersed himself in studying the various methods by which life and death fused together within the bloodline. Every integration method required analyzing countless secret patterns before extracting a universal principle. Even while consuming precious cultivation treasures that greatly accelerated his thinking, it still took him more than one epoch to completely comprehend the weakest early-stage divine emperor bloodline. In the end, he derived 19 different life and death integration methods. But he still could not grasp the ultimate, perfect union that allowed the bloodline to truly transcend the braided cage. Even so, he was satisfied because these methods alone would significantly improve his own life and death Tao once he incorporated them. Rather than immediately applying the new insights, Luo Feng chose to continue accumulating knowledge. Using the 19 integration methods as a foundation, he completely revised his earlier reconstruction of the ghost hunter bloodline. After spending another million days refining the plan, he examined the complete bloodline with the eye of life and death and discovered his reconstruction was already 60 to 70% accurate, proving he had finally found the correct direction. Although his cultivation resources were abundant, his own comprehension speed remained the greatest limitation. He believed that true high-level primordial lives could comprehend such mysteries tens of thousands of times faster. Nevertheless, he was content to rely on patience and time. Becoming increasingly grateful for Yuan Shang Palace Master's gift of 50 billion primordial crystals, which fully supported his cultivation. Luo Feng had acquired an enormous collection of primordial bloodlines, 323 early-stage divine emperor bloodlines, 257 middle stage, 152 late stage, and 36 divine emperor perfection bloodlines, costing a total of 28.3 billion primordial crystals including all supporting materials. The 36 perfection bloodlines were especially valuable because they represented low-level primordial lives that had fully developed their bloodlines, making them ideal references for understanding life and death. Elder Xingyi had even sourced many of these rare bloodlines from the dark sacred realm. Luo Feng also reflected on the remarkable efficiency of the Nine Rivers sacred realm, where every part of a primordial life's corpse was utilized. A single corpse could produce numerous complete bloodlines, while its bones, claws, and other parts were all used for artifact forging, alchemy, or puppetry. Because competition was so intense, even powerful divine emperor weapons and battleships were surprisingly affordable, whereas truly priceless treasures were those connected to transcending the braided cage, such as the Eye of Life and Death. Such treasures were created only in extremely limited numbers by Senior Yuan and others, never allowed to leave the source world, and were always reclaimed by infinite space after their owners died. Meanwhile, in Yulan City, the mysterious insect nest master learned that her elixir business had suffered greatly over the past epoch because the Dan Tower had sharply increased production and lowered prices, attracting many of her customers. During her closed-door cultivation, Luo Feng had joined the Dan Tower and helped strengthen its position after defeating Elder Tian He. Although the financial losses themselves were insignificant, she disliked the long-term implications. After reviewing the intelligence, she concluded that Luo Feng had interfered in the conflict between herself and the Dan Tower. Unable to act openly within the city, she dispatched a spiritual avatar to personally meet Luo Feng while her true body remained inside the enormous insect nest. The city's defensive formations detected the avatar but allowed it to pass freely because she was an elder. At the same time, Luo Feng continued studying the 36 life and death formations he had arranged throughout the Dan Tower. His recent understanding of complete primordial bloodlines allowed him to see flaws and crude aspects within formations created by earlier masters, whose knowledge had been limited because they lacked the Eye of Life and Death. Suddenly, Luo Feng sensed a cold and sinister spiritual presence approaching. His constantly active Lai Yuan technique automatically resisted the intrusion. Realizing an unknown expert had arrived, he immediately strengthened all 36 formations, activated his biomimetic destruction eye, and discovered the insect nest master's spiritual avatar standing calmly outside the main entrance of the Dan Tower. Luo Feng's biomimetic eye of destruction detected the insect nest master's spiritual avatar, though he could not identify her because her true body and spiritual avatar had completely different appearances and auras. The Chongqing building owner immediately recognized her and understood the seriousness of the situation. Having dealt with her many times before, the insect nest master accused the Chongqing building owner of relying on Luo Feng's arrival to challenge her dominance in Yuan City's elixir business. Chongqing explained that he had only maintained his usual lower prices while ensuring a stable supply, allowing customers to choose his products naturally. She mocked the idea of fair competition, declaring that no one had the right to compete with her and admitting she had been too lenient toward him. Although Chongqing argued that they were both cultivators from the source world with avatars, making it impossible for her to truly kill him, she coldly replied that she would continue humiliating him whenever they met. Turning her attention to Luo Feng, she warned him to stay out of her conflict with Chongqing or face severe consequences. Luo Feng calmly answered that he had accepted Chongqing's reward and now served as vice building owner of the Dan Tower. While he had no desire to become an enemy of the insect nest, he would fulfill his responsibility to protect the Dan Tower. The insect nest master immediately prepared to test his strength. Chongqing warned Luo Feng that this spiritual avatar specialized in spiritual corruption. But Luo Feng was already familiar with her reputation. Once an enlightened lineage cultivator, she had failed to reach perfection because of overwhelming spiritual pollution. She later switched to the bloodline system and obtained the high-level primordial bloodline known as the infinite cicada tomb. This bloodline transforms spiritual pollution into power, growing stronger the more corruption she endured while preserving a fragment of sanity. It was said that if she someday escaped the braided cage while accumulating enough pollution, she could awaken the bloodline completely and evolve into a high-level primordial life. Since she had arrived only with her spiritual avatar, Luo Feng knew she would rely entirely on spiritual attacks. Her accumulated corruption was feared even by many half-primordial level elders because cleansing it required enormous effort. However, Luo Feng remained confident thanks to his undying heart, which naturally resisted spiritual erosion, and Senior Yuan's Lai Yuan technique. The insect nest master's spiritual avatar instantly embraced Luo Feng. Using spiritual power that ignored conventional speed, Luo Feng was pulled into a terrifying illusion where he saw an enormous insect nest imprisoning countless consciousnesses, all writhing in endless suffering while the nest attempted to corrupt him. From this vision, Luo Feng immediately understood her cultivation method. Rather than simply killing opponents, she had devoured countless souls and permanently fused them into her insect nest, forcing billions of trapped consciousnesses to bear the burden of her spiritual pollution. She proudly declared that by sharing the corruption among countless victims, she had gained the strength to survive the endless nightmare. Despite her full effort, she could not find the slightest weakness in Luo Feng's mind, completely immune to her corruption. Luo Feng condemned her for enslaving countless souls and declared that someone as vile as her deserved to have died long ago. He regretted only that she possessed multiple avatars, making her extremely difficult to eliminate permanently. Realizing her corruption was ineffective, the insect nest master admitted that Luo Feng possessed extraordinary resistance. She claimed this visit had only been a warning from her spiritual avatar and threatened to return later with her true body. Luo Feng answered with contempt and immediately unleashed the Lai Yuan technique. Having long ago reached divine emperor perfection in spiritual will and recently gained deeper insight into transcending the braided cage through his study of primordial bloodlines, Luo Feng had greatly refined the Lai Yuan technique. He released a tiny, ordinary-looking miniature star that contained an almost perfect, naturally harmonious power. The insect nest master initially dismissed the attack, believing no spiritual technique could threaten her. However, the miniature star pierced straight through her strongest insect nest form, destroying it with unstoppable force. She was horrified, sensing within the attack a trace of the same natural perfection associated with the infinite cicada tomb bloodline. She suspected Luo Feng had inherited supreme secret techniques left behind by ancient seniors. The attack shattered millions of the souls imprisoned within her nest. Instead of despair, those souls welcomed destruction with peaceful smiles, finally freed from endless torment. Even worse, the delicate balance controlling her accumulated spiritual pollution collapsed. Realizing the damage was catastrophic, she immediately fled toward her lair while vowing to recover today's loss in the future. Luo Feng could only watch her escape, as pure spiritual avatars moved far faster than physical bodies. The astonished Chongqing building owner could hardly believe Luo Feng had defeated the insect nest master's spiritual avatar. He explained that he had only expected Luo Feng to defend the Dan Tower with the formation's assistance, never imagining he could force back one of Yuan City's most terrifying experts. Luo Feng, however, remained cautious, pointing out that he had only defeated her spiritual avatar. If she returned with her fully equipped true body and numerous secret treasures, she would be far more dangerous. Back in her enormous insect nest, the insect master's returning spiritual avatar suffered unbearable pain. Luo Feng's Lai Yuan technique had caused far greater damage than merely destroying several avatars by throwing her carefully controlled spiritual pollution into chaos. Forced to focus entirely on stabilizing the rampant corruption, she had no choice but to abandon any immediate thoughts of revenge. Luo Feng's conflict with the insect nest master continued to cast a shadow over Dan Tower as its production of heart-cleansing pills steadily expanded. Inside one of Dan Tower's smaller towers, Emperor Ming, the deputy hall master of Heart-Clearing Hall, supervised the inspection of newly refined pills alongside two subordinates. They carefully examined a batch containing 935 superior quality heart-cleansing pills and 72 supreme quality ones, confirming their quality before Emperor Ming personally separated and stored them. Since the pills had already been inspected by the alchemists and would undergo a final inspection before sale, Emperor Ming believed there was virtually no possibility of errors. His responsibility was limited to identifying and storing heart-cleansing pills, the most popular foundational pills sold by Dan Tower, which accounted for roughly 30% of its total business, while more specialized experts handled material collection and alchemy. Emperor Ming was quite satisfied with his peaceful position under Luo Feng, earning 200 primordial crystals every epoch while living rent-free in Luo Feng's cave mansion, allowing him to steadily accumulate wealth over countless epochs. However, his subordinates revealed that the recent increase in heart-cleansing pill production had alarmed the insect nest, and they feared retaliation. Although Emperor Ming reassured them that both Luo Feng and the Dan Tower owner were stationed there, the two ordinary members admitted they had become so frightened that they cancelled their outside residences and moved entirely into Dan Tower. Since they possessed no spiritual avatars, they worried that if the insect nest could not attack Luo Feng or the tower owner directly, it might instead vent its anger on weaker members like themselves. Emperor Ming understood their concerns, knowing through Luo Feng that the insect nest master's spiritual avatar had already clashed with him and that another confrontation seemed inevitable. Despite this uneasiness, ordinary members dared not resign because the position was too profitable, leaving them with no choice but to remain vigilant. Luo Feng and the Chongqing building owner also remained on full alert after deliberately initiating normal commercial competition against the insect nest. They believed the insect nest master's pride would never allow her previous defeat to go unanswered. Luo Feng stated that if her true body attacked, he would rely entirely on defensive formations and was confident he could withstand her assault. Since Yuan City strictly prohibited killing within its borders, the Chongqing building owner believed simply holding the defensive line would be sufficient. Based on the insect nest master's notorious personality, they expected her to strike within only a few epochs, prompting Luo Feng to permanently station one of his avatars at Dan Tower while waiting for her arrival. Unexpectedly, 10 epochs passed without any retaliation. Both Luo Feng and the Chongqing building owner found this extremely strange because the insect nest master was famous throughout Yuan City as one of its three great leaders of theft and plunder, ruling with overwhelming force and crushing anyone who opposed her. Unlike the more calculating master of deceit workshop and shadow tower owner, she normally responded to challenges immediately and ruthlessly. They speculated that either the previous clash had convinced her the risk was too great or that urgent matters within the dark sacred realm had temporarily occupied her attention. More than 200 epochs later, the true reason for her silence became clear. Within the enormous insect nest, the insect nest master had finally succeeded in stabilizing the severe spiritual contamination caused by her previous battle with Luo Feng. During that encounter, Luo Feng's Lai Yuan technique had destroyed billions of imprisoned souls that formed an essential part of her spiritual power. Although the physical wounds seemed minor, the loss of those countless souls severely damaged her foundation. To recover, she spent centuries consuming another massive group of cultivators from her own source world, where everything existed merely as nourishment for her cultivation. Even after finally suppressing the contamination, she realized that another direct confrontation with Luo Feng's secret technique could inflict another devastating blow. As a result, she decided she would never challenge Luo Feng again until she obtained a secret treasure powerful enough to defend her spiritual consciousness. Although she possessed superior treasures, they remained in the dangerous dark sacred realm, where even half-primordial level beings frequently appeared and where those treasures were far too valuable to remove. Furthermore, after suffering such enormous losses, she had only around 30 billion primordial crystals available, while that amount represented a fair price for treasures like the Undying Heart. Such items were extraordinarily rare and were usually purchased immediately by powerful allies before they ever reached the open market. Unable to secure adequate protection, the insect nest master reluctantly chose to swallow her anger and temporarily abandon any thoughts of revenge. 300 epochs after the original battle, Luo Feng continued enjoying peaceful cultivation in Yuan City while focusing his true efforts inside the Star Tower within the Land of Origin. There, he devoted himself to studying the 195th sample of an early Divine Emperor-level primordial bloodline. Every primordial bloodline revealed another fragment of the profound mysteries beyond the cage, allowing him to observe countless intricate secret patterns perfectly integrated into a flawless whole. Through long-term study, his understanding of the fusion between life and destruction deepened dramatically until his own concepts reached roughly 90% similarity with the primordial bloodlines themselves. Eventually, his accumulated insights reached a critical point. Instead of merely combining life and destruction, Luo Feng suddenly comprehended the path toward their true fusion, causing his life and death Dao to naturally advance from the early stage to the middle stage of the Divine Emperor realm without deliberate effort. He immediately recognized that this breakthrough had been made possible by Yuan Shang Palace Master's generous gift of 50 billion primordial crystals, which allowed him to purchase enormous quantities of cultivation resources and repeatedly consume Dan Tower's auxiliary elixirs to accelerate his research. Luo Feng also realized that he had not yet completed the entire collection of early Divine Emperor-level bloodlines, while even more advanced middle stage, late stage, and perfected bloodlines still awaited him, giving him great confidence in his future progress. After the breakthrough, an endless blood sea manifested around him, symbolizing the tremendous qualitative evolution of his life and death Dao. Luo Feng estimated that his newly advanced middle-stage Divine Emperor life and death Dao now rivaled the ordinary Dao paths cultivated by half-primordial level experts, representing a far greater increase in strength than powerful treasures such as the Undying Heart or the Palm World could ever provide. Delighted by this major advancement, Luo Feng finally decided to take a break from his long period of secluded cultivation. Remembering the gifts he had prepared long ago for his masters, he gathered them and departed from the Star Tower, choosing to first visit Emperor Chu in the Chu capital.